Hello, I'm Dr. James Bogash, expert in health and longevity and creator of Bogash Life and Balance. And today we're going to talk about something that we all do and a lot of us have problems with, and that is sleep. And not only that, but how strongly poor sleep is related to brain health and things like cognitive decline and dementia. We've known this. This isn't really a big surprise where things like sleep problems are linked to dementia. Like, that's not new. We've known this for quite a few years. We know that sleep hypnotics, so anything we would take to help us sleep, whether that's Tylenol PM or Valium or Ativan or anything along those lines, are associated with over 500,000 deaths per year. It's something like 570,000. And so, and that probably has to do with stress. Because that's not a big surprise, saying that stress kills 500,000 people every single year, year in, year out. That shouldn't come as a big shock. But stress absolutely affects our ability to sleep. So in this particular study, researchers looked at a little almost 3,000, so 2,812 people who were 65 and older, and they followed them for 5 years and asked them questions about how much sleep they get per night, sleep quality, sleep latency, so like how long it takes them to fall asleep. And there were some very strong links between not only dementia, but also all-cause mortality, or pretty much dying from anything. They found that those people who slept 5 or less hours per night had a 204% higher risk of developing dementia and a 238% higher risk of dying from anything. Those people who had a problem with sleep latency, so greater than 30 minutes, so basically lay down and can't fall asleep within 30 minutes, had a 45% increased risk of dementia. Those are some pretty strong links. And other aspects, so daytime sleepiness, napping during the day, those things were all also associated with all-cause mortality. So if you're not sleeping well, you are going to die sooner. And looking at the studies where sleep hypnotics are linked to deaths, medicating your sleep isn't going to fix anything. The outcomes are still going to be the same, which is what we find with a lot of drugs. Unless we fix the problem, we're not actually fixing anything, just the outward marker. So what I'm going to do, I certainly have conversations with my patients all the time about how to get them to help sleep. I'm going to go over 4 tips that are pretty darn common that can help people get back to sleep. And the first one, believe it or not, insulin resistance. So prediabetes, not only is its links between sleep apnea, which is a whole discussion in and of itself, but also just being pre-diabetic and having a poor quality diet is linked to poor sleep quality. Even if you aren't diagnosed with sleep apnea, your dietary choices play a huge role in your ability to sleep at night. So what you're having for breakfast is going to affect how well you sleep at night. So keep that in mind, that our diet quality. So if you're not sleeping well, it's not about taking a benzodiazepine before bed. It's about evaluating your diet and seeing how good or bad it is and what we can do to fix it. Tip number 2, other natural things that can help with sleep. Valerian root has been commonly used. I generally don't recommend it unless somebody happens to be overly stressed. I don't have an issue with valerian. It's certainly worth trying. It's relatively inexpensive. You know, you got the good stuff if it smells awful. So valerian root is definitely on the list for trying if people have a problem sleeping. In that same realm, things like 5-HTP and L-theanine are 2 compounds that help our brain calm down. 5-HTP, our body actually converts to either serotonin or melatonin, which I'll talk about in a second. And then L-theanine is our body uses it to make more GABA. So gamma-aminobutyric acid is a settling, calming influence on the brain. So those things can help calm down the brain and help people sleep, especially if stress is an issue. Tip number 4, nocturnal hypoglycemia. So I've had patients who they go to bed at 9, 10 o'clock, and every night at midnight or 1 or 2 o'clock, they wake up around the same time every night. And what can happen is that we can go into what's called hypoglycemia, or low blood sugar, in the middle of the night at a pretty consistent time. If you eat dinner at the same time every night and you're waking up around the same time in the middle of the night, this might be an issue. When our brain runs out of fuel, it needs fuel. So one of the things it's going to do is break down muscle mass. And it does that using cortisol, which is the body's arousal hormone, and that can wake you up. The simple solution to see if that's a player is something healthy but heavy before you go to bed. So like a teaspoon of real peanut butter, a handful of nuts, a little bit of chicken. If that's an issue with you falling asleep, it'll fix, or with you waking up, that'll fix it very quickly. So something to play. And the last one has to do with melatonin and light at night. I happen to be a very big fan of using things like a sleep mask, because we can be very sensitive to light at night, especially on the blue end of the spectrum. I remember a study done on children quite a few years ago, and they looked at, I believe it was lux, was the measure of light in a room. And they found that higher levels of lux in the children's room led to more obesity. So even if they were sleeping okay, that light was interfering with that pathway, and that most likely has to do with melatonin, because when blue light hits the retina, so you think sunlight, ultraviolet light, it shuts down melatonin production. This is how we regulate our sleep-wake cycle. So if you're being exposed to all kinds of white light in the evening when we're not supposed to, that's where melatonin can play a role. I've recommended blue blocker glasses for those of you that grew up in the 70s and 80s. In Car and Driver, they always had these amber glasses that you could buy for $5. Same kind of concept. They're a little bit more less yellow these days. But wearing blue blocker glasses that you can get on Amazon for next to nothing, or blue light, or filters on our devices. They'll call them like an eye fatigue or eye strain, or a blue light filter that can help. So being careful the amount of white light, specifically blue light, that you're exposed to in the tail end of the evening is very important for helping regulate sleep-wake cycles. Melatonin, I will recommend, especially with people who have work night shift. So if you are coming home when the sunlight is hitting your retinas, you're going to have a hard time falling asleep, and melatonin can actually play a role with that. Same thing with jet lag. So just a couple tips to help with sleeping so that you don't destroy your brain and can sleep better and make life wonderful. As always, I'll post a link to this particular study in the description. Make sure you like this video, share it with somebody who you think needs this information, and subscribe to the channel.